It'd make it easier at this point, right?
I think he does it.
I like the end about the family going to the doghouse where they get an internet connection.
Right.
Cool. Let's call to order the October 2nd North Gateway Redevelopment Advisory Board meeting. We'll start with roll call.
Jared Martin,
Here.
Deacon Lucas,
Here.
Mike Allen,
Here.
Nathan Levin,
Here.
Scott Cantonwine,
Here.
Dana Castano.
Sure.
She's. Where is she? No, she's gone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kevin Loss.
Yeah, she's
Okay.
Okay, can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second,
Second the motion.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All opposed, approved. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes from May? It's been since May. Second,
I second the motion to approve the May minutes.
all approved, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Minutes approved. We do not have public comment. We're gonna start off with Aaron on the Silverton Road update. Started, right?
Yeah, it
Cool.
is. Right, sure. Yeah, that was- Please. So I don't think it's been terrible long since like last year. So basically it's providing an update on the construction, and what's kind of underway and what's to come. So there's two different contracts out there. I think we talked about that a bit last time. There's a contractor that's gonna do the sanitary sewer rehabilitation work on Lana, a short piece on Silverton, and then wraps around on Evergreen as well. That is kind of the bulk of the disruptions we're seeing out there today. Actually, as of today, they're planning to do lane closures on Silverton Road, so they will take Silverton Road down with one lane in each direction for about a week. Then it'll be a 24-hour a day operation. What that is that's to allow them to be able to bypass the sewer flows before they get into the lining work. So a fair amount of disruption that's gonna occur here in the next 2 weeks, say, just to be safe. Again, that's gonna be a 24-hour a day operation. They will be bypassing flows from Evergreen through the fairgrounds property up on Atlanta. So we've been trying to coordinate closely with Salem Kaiser Schools, the DMV, all the local businesses, residents. Hopefully everybody's aware of what's coming. Yeah, so there's a map we sent out to folks a couple weeks ago about some of the lane closures that will sound as a part of that. So everybody can rotate their.
I'm working on it.
The red is the lane closures on Silverton Road. There will also be a reduced speed limit because of the lane closures. The side streets are in purple on that map, so Duncan, Abrams, Evergreen, and Park. There will be road closures to those, so at Silverton Road, we'll be able to access those side streets. For a variety of reasons, there's actually going to be a physical above ground pipeline in the roadway down Silverton Road, so voters won't be able to turn through that obstruction. The blue dashed line and the orange dashed line will be the sign detours for the local residents to be able to get back around. Thankfully, these side streets are all pretty well connected. You can get over to Portland Road on the north side or down the side, you get on the south side, pretty good connectivity. So that's what's coming on that piece. Again, the contractor hopes to be out there by the end of next week with that 24-hour day operation, this disruption. Just to be safe, I'm gonna say it might take 2 weeks. You just never know what you're gonna get into once they get going. And then following that up, the local contractor that has the street work, they are also gonna get started they've already kind of got started, but they're gonna start on the street improvements on the bigger corridor, which is essentially from 17th all the way down to Fisher. One of the first things you'll see them do is they're gonna install a temporary traffic signal at the intersection of 17th. And they're gonna focus a bunch of their efforts at the intersection of 17th. So that's where they're gonna start, and they're gonna be out there for year and a half almost, but they're gonna start at 17th. They're gonna try to go from 17th towards Fisher on the south side. Then the improvements on that, just kind of in a general term, so it's hopscotching around because they gotta maintain ADA access, so you'll see them kind of jump and do like one corner at one side street, maybe jump back, do another corner at previous side street, kind of just hopscotch around to be able to keep pedestrians moving through the corridor, but they'll focus on that southern side. And then they'll come back on the northern side and wrap up the north side of the 17th Street intersection. They followed up with paving, grinding next summer. But they're looking to get in and be pretty aggressive with their schedule, which I think is a good thing. So hopefully they can get in, get out, driving that. So. Fair amount of work coming. So expect delays, congestion, all those fun things that come with construction. Great. Yeah, yeah, great.
Couple of questions. Are you enlarging capacity or just relining existing
On sewer,
on the sewers?
we are just relining. So there's a large trunk main that goes through there and so takes flows up to Kaiser, the little treatment plant. It's a pretty critical piece of the infrastructure. It's got some pretty good deterioration. So no capacity. The liner shouldn't really reduce capacity. So essentially what they do is they stick a liner down and you can see pipe laid on.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the
Yeah, so it does.
mechanical side of the,
Okay, it does reduce the diameter of the pipe, you know, a small amount, but it also will help. We'll be able to go through
Right.
further, so it's kind of equitable. It's just essentially correcting that deterioration.
Are you guys gonna have it pretty well cleaned up by state fair time next year?
So this project has lots of restrictions related to all the activities that are out here, for example. I've answered your question, but kind of related.
Yeah.
That, what you see on the screen, that impacts 5 different schools. So, we're like in the corner of all these different boundaries, so there's, you know, if you throw in the state fair, the school district and all that stuff, there's a lot of different restrictions the contractors have to work around.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the reason we did it and gave the project such a long duration, because there's a bunch of spells where you can't do work.
Yeah.
State fair. So the goal is if they're not done, they have to go away during that state fair period, but what I understand is what the street contractor is hoping is pretty much that 5-month period. Same with some of the peg crossings, like we're building the peg crossing on 17th down there in front of the fairgrounds. They're hoping to get in there and do that in kind of a down period. There's another peg crossing over on Sedona with school kids that come across from the north side of Silverton over to Washington and Waldo. You'll have to try and coordinate some of those improvements, whether it's during like spring break week or off season, to try to help keep the flow of all that. So, yeah, it's a challenge when you think of county fair, the state fair, all those other events that go on at the fairgrounds. For example, that vacant corner at 17th, the big gravel lot, that's a leaf hall spot as well. It's just a lot going on there.
Anybody got any questions?
Oh, good summary.
I don't have any questions. I just have already noticed the traffic and the changes for some of the work starting on Silverton and Lana. So it's exciting. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, pay attention to the reduced speeds, there'll be a couple different periods where we reduce sections from. I think most of it out there is 35 currently, but it will be lower, so. Pay attention to that, that usually comes with increased enforcement.
Yeah.
And
I have a question. I know it's just a short stretch of Silverton Road that might be resurfaced as a result of this, but is there gonna be any type of improvement into like the lane width or adding of like things like bicycle lanes, or I see the pedestrian islands and lighting, but anything else to that nature of just improving the surface for people and other than cars?
yes, it does. We have the other bigger area. I think it's the down.
It didn't go out in the packet, so we don't have
Is that
that.
what it did?
No,
I
I
thought it's. Okay,
don't think so.
okay, no worries. So yes, we will be,
It's from the last minutes.
yeah.
That is actually in the.
Oh, that's just, I didn't see it, this agenda.
There you go. So I don't know if that's viewable on your end, but to answer your question, we will be repaving essentially from the railroad tracks to Williams. And then we're jumping from Williams to Beacon, we're skipping that piece, which is in the black box there on the map. And then we'll be resurfacing from Beacon to Fisher on the eastern end. So there will be a fair amount of new surface out there, as you're aware, the existing conditions are pretty undesirable. And then to speak to the striping and the bike lanes, so a part of this project will, some folks call it a road diet, but we're essentially taking Silverton Road from 2 lanes in each direction down to 1 lane in each direction with a center turn lane and bike lanes. And that will exist from 17th to almost Hawthorne. And then in that Hawthorne area, the existing curb width is wide enough to still accommodate those bike facilities in the center turn lane and 2 lanes in each direction. So essentially, when this is all said and done, there will be bike lanes all the way from 17th to Fisher. So yes, in a sense, it does reduce traffic volume a little bit, but right now what you have is we have a lot of rear end collisions out there, safety issues because of everybody's on the turn, right? So you have a lot of rear end collisions. So that center turn lane should really help with that. So it'll really kind of flow about the same, even though there's one less traffic. We've done that around town in other corridors. Generally, it works pretty well.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
Yeah, you, right? And just I guess a nugget into the future, we are looking to try to get going on the next pavement or which is on Portland Road. So Sarah and I will be coordinating on that soon, and you may see some letters going out to residents here in the next couple months saying we're looking to come out and start surveying. Great.
And I'll touch base with the board so that we can figure out what we can add to it with what we have for funding, so to try and kind of equal the work that we already did on Portland Road, so kind of extending a lot of those improvements that we never thought we were gonna be able to do, but with the bond project, we're gonna be able to make a lot of those improvements kind of from the tunnel up to where we stopped, so we'll be working on kind of how do we a la carte it is kind of the plan. Here's our list and how much does it cost and what do we have, and so we'll be bringing that back to the board.
Pretty similar to what we did here on 17th. Brought all sorts of funding together on this project to kind of accomplish all the different stuff we're doing, you know?
Leverage.
Great, thanks.
Thank you all, thanks for having me. Thank you. Well,
Sarah,
Yeah.
you're welcome to stay for ethics training.
I'm sure.
Poor Brian.
I think it's being recorded. You watch this video.
I'll take that into consideration.
There'll be a quiz later just in case.
Okay. Brian's here to do ethics training. I'm gonna hand it over to Brian.
Sorry, Brian.
Well, good morning. My name is Brian Luce. I'm an assistant city attorney, and we'll spend a few minutes with you this morning to discuss public meetings, public records, and ethical considerations. I always start this off with a congratulations to all the board members. You are public officials and have responsibilities when you accept an appointment on this committee. But that's okay if we use some common sense and follow the rules. You never have any problems generally. I'm going to cover a little bit about public meetings. This is currently a public meeting. It's been properly noticed. The purpose of public meetings is to provide an opportunity for the public to attend, provide comment, and that they're aware of, what our government entities are doing. So there's rules and regulations on how you notice these meetings and make them available to the public. Purpose of that, as I stated, a proper notice, it's accessible to all with these hybrid meetings. It makes things a lot easier because it's, people can jump on and jump off at their leisure, but you're not required to do an online version. You can do it totally public. But I think a lot of people embrace this efficiency of these hybrid meetings, but you still have to be careful that you're still following the rules when you're doing that. Each of your decisions should be made or discussed in public, which will lead later to the ethics issues. You can't have private deliberations. It should be done in open in the public meetings so the public can be aware of what's going on. Well, who's subject to the law? If two of you go out to a movie or dinner, is that a public meeting? Well, it applies to all meetings of a governing body, of a public body. This is a governing body, advisory one, public body, city, for which the quorum is required to make a decision or deliberate towards any decision. Even deliberations with no final decision have to be done in these open meetings. Public bodies, city, county, and other subdivisions of the state, but for this purposes, this advisory board is body. Governing body means two or more members of the public body. Governing body includes not only council, but also boards like this. What meetings are subject to the law? Well, a meeting is the convening of a governing body for which a quorum, which should have a certain number depending on your rules, is required in order to make a decision or deliberate decision. These rules apply to a meeting, even if the sole purpose is just to gather information. No deliberation, no final decision. If you're gathering information or work sessions, gathering information on what's upcoming, gathering information about current projects, those still are required to be held in a public session. What's not a public meeting? Well, if you have less than a quorum, not enough people show up, you cannot hold a public meeting. You have to have that minimum number to gavel in and gavel out. Social gatherings. Say hi at lunch, you all end up at the mayor's speech, yearly speech, governor's ball, whatever it may be. And we'll talk about rules to make sure that you don't violate, public meetings laws when you're not in a public meeting. And on-site inspections, if you were all to go out and look at this Portland Road, reconstruction that's going on, and you hopped in a vehicle and went over and inspected it, viewed. That would not be considered a public meeting, but you cannot deliberate or make decisions about future actions. You have to hold those until you have a properly noticed public meeting. So inspections, you can look at it, but you've got to maintain, no deliberations and certainly no final decisions. Here's some pitfalls that occur because of technology. Telephonic conference calls or other Zoom type meetings can be problematic if you have people just jump on to discuss, hey, let's discuss about talking about the Portland Road project in the future. You can violate your meetings laws without inadvertently if you're not paying attention. Dundee, it's about 10-15 years old now. Some Lane County board members, they violated the public meetings law through serial meetings that occurred through email. So for example, I just use chairs. this chair says, hey, what do you think of the Portland Road construction? Should we support it? That email is sent to the next person, to the next person, to the next person, to the next person. You're deliberating outside of a properly noticed public meeting, and you're doing it serially, trying to avoid having that public discussion, which ultimately is a bad thing, led to a violation of the public meetings laws. The deal with being a public official is ethical responsibilities are on yourself. They are not the cities, they are not the counties, they are not the city attorneys or insurance. These commissioners were in a unique situation that several of them were attorneys. I believe 2 of them were attorneys. One of them was very versed in public meetings laws, having provided advice to others previously on that topic. They actually had a decision or a memo from the county attorney saying what you did was okay or is okay. That does not provide cover for the public officials. So they were personally found liable for $20,000. The county was liable for $350,000. And those are covered by insurance and those are personal responsibility. So take these rules seriously. Electronic communications, serial meetings, lessons from Dundee. Use of email by a quorum of governing body might constitute a meeting. So if you're sending out shotgun mails, or emails, and then you're also doing that forward email, you could create a quorum to forwarding those emails. Did you have a quorum of folks get the email? Were they deliberating? Any setting that was private, not open to the public, these emails, the public had no access to them, they have no knowledge that they're occurring or that they can't participate or listen to the deliberations. They knew the requirements of the law, they failed to comply, and they were found willfully liable for this, so they knew or should have known about these rules. And this is kind of why we do this training, so that you've got at least an idea that it's not the wild west, and there are some limitations and some structure that ensure that all of our public officials follow. There was a follow-up problem with the Handy v. Lane matter in Lane County. They violated the public meetings by discussing via email the substance of the matter before the commission. Members responded, reply all, to a county administrator. It was originally set up of, hey, are you available on this date to hold a public meeting? Well, a reply all is, well, I think we need to consider settling this matter or something along those lines. So be very, very careful with your emails if you're dealing with Sarah or others about administrative things. That's fine, but keep it only to dates, times, time of availability along those lines, not substance to the potential or things that are being discussed in front of this board. In the second case, they considered it accidental and not intentional, so there was no fine associated with it, but they stepped on themselves twice in a row, so they had the spotlight on them, not a good thing. Yeah, they went beyond the administrative. Yeah. Okay, this is where I always pull this thing out. This thing can get you in trouble. 15 years ago, it wasn't so much of a problem, but it's very easy to jump on Zoom. Email, text messages, you can violate the open meetings law by sending a text to the group, a phone call to the group, an email to the group, an SMS, any other technology that I'm not aware of. So be very careful when you're utilizing your private phone. If you are conducting city business as a public official on your phone, and you don't want to create a bunch of public records on your phone, make sure those communications CC Sarah, someone at the city, so that if there's a public records request, we don't have to say, hey, please send us all your emails, or the court could eventually order in a public records request and challenge saying, we want to go ahead and mirror and copy your phone because we want to search to see if you're withholding any public records. So be very careful when you're using your private devices that you're not maintaining government public records on them. and CC Sarah or others to ensure that we've got copies of those public records in the city can respond rather than having to go to directly to those sources. So be careful of those things. What's a public record? Well, it's pretty broad. Prepared, used, owned, retained by state agency or political subdivision. It relates to an activity, transaction, or function of the state agency or political subdivision, and is necessary to satisfy the fiscal, legal, administrative, or historical policies, requirements, or needs of the state agency or political subdivision. We have responsibilities as a city to maintain public records for accuracy and retain them for periods of time that are required by the public records retention laws. So we have an obligation to members of the public to keep copies of all our public records so they can be inspected, so that we can show the public what we've been doing. Public officials. Well, who's a public official? We're going to talk about conflict of interest, gifts, and use of your office. To whom do ethics laws apply? Public officials, congratulations. Relatives of the public official, congratulations to them. And for gifts, members of the public's official household. And if you all own a business, congratulations, you have responsibilities as a public official regarding your business as well. Public official means elected, our city councilors appointed, you all employees, Sarah and I and others, and our agents. So if we hire an expert witness or an outside lawyer or some professional, they have ethics responsibility as well. And you're a public official even if you don't get paid. What's business mean? Well, it's a private business entity, corporation, partnership, franchisee. If you're self-employed, doesn't include 501c corporations in 2 scenarios. You're only a member of the board and you don't receive any compensation or remuneration. The state has ethics rules and the city has ethics rules as well. They're not exactly the same. The city is more strict upon what you're allowed to do than state law. So if you're following city rules, you'll also be following state rules. But if you're just following state rules, you're not going to meet the requirements of the city of Salem's ethics requirements. We've got conflicts of interest rules, which are laid out in our Salem revised code. We've got an appearance rule, appearance of impropriety, special favors, and then your responsibility to maintain confidentiality of information that's given to you. What's an actual conflict of interest? Well, if you are, you're a public official, you're on a board, and the question of purchase of a lot comes up, and you're going to recommend it for whatever purpose, and your wife owns it, or you own it, and you're on the board that's going to make a recommendation to city council. Well, what do you do? Well, you may have an actual conflict of interest. And under the state law, any action or decision or recommendation by a person acting in capacity as a public official would be to the private pecuniary benefit or detriment of that person or the person's relative. Well, if you're going to receive a chunk of change from the city to purchase that property, then you likely have a conflict of interest. State is pecuniary, but the city's more restrictive and it's any benefit or detriment. So beyond just money, you could have some other benefit that you receive as a result of that, land swap, 1031 exchange. There could be a bunch of different things beyond just the cash. So the city has decided we want to be more restrictive because ultimately we want to have things be above board as possible. So if you have an actual conflict of interest, you declare it and then you don't participate. So I have an actual conflict of interest, I'm not going to participate or vote in this discussion. If you have a potential conflict of interest, essentially the same, but could be to the private, you're not sure how it's going to play out, where it's going to go. It's 15 steps down the way. What do you do then? Well, in the cities, again, more restricted, being any benefit or detriment, even if it's beyond financial. With a potential conflict of interest, you're not required to recuse yourself, but you are required to say, hey, here's a possibility that you know, it's really speculative down this way, but it may help my car dealership or something along those lines. You disclose it, you continue to participate, if I suppose it ultimately becomes an actual conflict of interest, you would have to disclose that and then, you know, stop your participation in that particular transaction. Conflict of interest, actuals disclosed, refrain from discussion or voting. Abstaining is not sufficient because you're participating. I'll skip the rule of necessity that's generally for councils or Supreme Courts and things along those lines. City law removes that exemption. Potential, disclose the nature, but you may participate. But again, we're here in Salem, where we're even more strict than that, where we throw in this appearance of impropriety rule. How does it look? Appearance of impropriety within Salem. Public officials are bound to observe in their official capacity the highest standards of morality and to discharge faithfully the duties of their office, regardless of their personal consideration. Their conduct in both their official and private affairs should be above reproach. We don't want to get situations where the members of the public are going, how could this not be a conflict of interest at all? Just look at how it looks. So we have to keep that in mind. If something doesn't look right, it's better to go ahead and disclose than to not. You've got an obligation for fair and impartial fulfillment of your duties. You can't contact city councilors to obtain preferential consideration. No use of city-owned property for your private use, so no borrowing vans to go camping. And no public official shall grant any special privilege to any citizen beyond what is available to everybody else. So you can't, no public official can say, okay, Mr. or Mrs. Citizen, yeah, you can get this benefit, but only you. So we try to treat everybody equally. Disclosure of confidential information. On occasion, there will be information that could cross your desk that is confidential to the city at this point. If it's a real estate transaction, it may be confidential at this period of time, but in the future it will not be. You as a public official, you have to maintain confidential information in confidence while you're a public official. And you can't use any, insider trading information. If your buddy owns the lot, you can say, hey, the city's coming to buy it, you can be able to be a little higher on that price. So you have to be real careful on that. Consequences for violations, as we found out in the Lane Dundee case, can be civil penalties. It can be forfeiture of, some sort of benefit that you receive, and you can be sanctioned. City adds removal of the office, and section 62 allows city council a broad authority to act accordingly. Chapter 62 of the city charter applies to both elected and appointed officials at public hearings. It's a good idea to go ahead and read through it. It's not particularly long, but it requires the disclosure of certain gifts, relationships, and campaign contributions. Requires recusal if the presence of gift, relationship, or contribution creates appearance of impropriety in the mind of a reasonable person. Complicated exemption procedures, rule of necessity, and unanimous waivers generally never happen in advisory boards, but are available in unique situations. Remember, compliance with ethics laws is a personal responsibility. You have to comply with both state and city ethics, but remember, cities are more restrictive and always control. The role of the city attorney's office, like I said before, in the Dundee case, they received a written opinion from the city attorney that their actions would be okay. And ultimately, the ethics board provided zero protection to the public officials. So even the city attorney saying, hey, yeah, you can do it, is not protection, because the ethics considerations are personal for the public official. The city's client is the city and the Urban Renewal Agency and the Salem Housing Authority. We do not represent individual public officials in their personal or professional capacity. Public officials cannot rely on the advice of legal counsel as a defense to violations. We serve as a guide through the process and get you pointed in the right direction. Where to go for ethics advice if you have a situation? Well, you got the Oregon Government Ethics Commission, OGEC. They can provide you, you send an email, they'll give you informal advice. Okay, an email back saying, I think you're in good shape, doesn't protect you. You can get a staff advisory opinion, which is a little higher, takes a little longer. Still, no exemption from liability. You have to get an official commission opinion that will exempt you from liability because they're kind of creating this scenario and putting it out there. It's an exemption from liability, but they generally take months and months and months. So unfortunately or fortunately, a lot of these ethical decisions are, you have to play them out, weigh them, look heavily to the appearance of impropriety, actual or conflict, and then work your problem through that. OGDC has new training requirements for public officials. It's available online or it's recorded, so I would consider taking those. Also, I don't think that's too terribly long at any time. Where do you go for ethics advice for city issues? We have a city hearings officer. He receives and initiates ethics complaints. He hears and investigates them. And he can also render advisory opinions or interpretations. So you can get his opinion on something. It will not give you complete cover, but if you can talk things through, it can often help you decide whether this gray area is really that gray and is it worth taking any risks. You can contact Dan Atchison. He is the city attorney, but also feel free to reach out to me and I can work with Dan what you need. I think that is it. Do you have any questions for me? Thank you.
You were in and out.
Thanks, Brian. Or change.
Well, I know we've had some board members already take the state ethics training, Nate's done it.
Yeah.
Two others, so I think we'll do that. And I think most of the board members will notice when you get emails from me, 9 times out of 10, I will put on there that it's to the board members, but I will BC you all so that you're not replying to each other so that we don't run into that. So that's part of the reason why, even if it's something simple like forwarding you information or whatnot, I'll say, it's all of the board, but you won't see the board members. And it's just so that you can't accidentally start to engage in one of those conversations. So that is one thing that we try to do to kind of protect everybody. So you don't accidentally be like, oh, hey, did someone see this? And then it kind of spirals from there. So that is one of the reasons why you'll see that often. It's not that I'm sending 15 emails or I'm crazy.
I do have a question. He represents a business, I represent business. If I was to sit down with Mike over a cup of coffee and ask him the question, how does your business, not him, but how does his business see an issue with Silverton Road? And is that something that he could answer?
It would depend on the nature of the question and what the project is with Silverton Road. If it's unrelated to board business or board recommendation, and it's purely, how is this affecting your business or things along those lines. If it's unrelated to board activity, that you're not doing deliberations upon something that would come before the board or is before the board.
It would be specifically related to a project that was coming before the board.
Well, he, being the business, I suppose you as a business owner, you'd have to make a determination if that, discussion is a deliberation about upcoming board business. And if so, you need to ensure that you're not taking any deliberations outside of the properly noticed public hearing. And those discussions should be held here, but you may also have a potential conflict of interest or an actual conflict of interest, depending on the nature of the public, which may require you to disclose and or recuse yourself. If it's unrelated to that board decision, but may have some sort of de minimis impact just because of the location of your business, that's kind of that gray area. Where do you go and how does it affect it? So you have to really have to look at the nature of what's what. If you're talking about, hey, what do you think the new, bike locks that we're gonna use that's unrelated to the board stuff, you'll be in good shape with. It's anything that's before the board or could come before the board, I'd recommend not discussing those outside of the properly noticed public meeting.
And some of you might recall, I know when we revamped the grant programs, almost everybody on the board declared a potential conflict of interest because they might apply for funds. So, you know, nobody had one, we didn't have active applications, we weren't tailoring it to someone's, nobody had a suggestion, there were specific things, we didn't have an actual. But that was a situation where 3/4 of the board, just to be safe, went ahead and just declared a potential because they might apply in the future.
No, I recused my first, remember at the first vote,
You
I
had-
had
you had a great
to,
meeting.
I had to excuse myself.
Yeah.
Vote.
So, you know, it's,
Declare an actual conflict.
Yeah.
Sit that one out, and the remainder of the board
Yeah.
makes the decision.
exactly, it's always easier to be safe, you know, just put it out there and then we can continue on than put anyone in a situation where it could look.
Right.
Um,
Cause if you've declared or I've got a potential, there's less likely that someone's gonna claim that there's an appearance of impropriety if you've gone in and said, hey, I've got a potential conflict of interest, just letting everyone know. Rather than someone saying, hey, do you have a potential conflict of interest? It doesn't look right. We want to avoid those type of things, ensure that the public has, you know, faith in our public officials and their activities.
And I think Nate, you're always really good about that too, because you do so much business throughout the area, just kind of giving everyone a heads up. You know, I think you're great about it, so. I don't recall the board, actually, I don't remember, since I've been staffing it, I don't think we've ever had anyone complain or have any issues, so I think everyone's doing a great job.
You do your business here, then generally you don't have any.
But there's been a lot of things floating lately, so we just felt like maybe it was a good chance to check in and just make sure everyone, no one had any questions or concerns or anything, because we don't want anyone to feel uncomfortable doing the great work that you all do, so that's part of it too.
It's a good idea.
Clarifying,
Within our company, we do regular ethics training, we also some other organizations that do stuff. It's a good idea.
Dana, did you have a question or a comment?
yeah, I did have a question. So Sarah, you had mentioned many of us that have already taken the training that the state's offered for public meetings laws, and I'm wondering if you could refresh my memory. Are we supposed to take that as board members every year? Is it every 2 years?
It's just
And
once during your term, so if you've taken it once, you're good to go until technically your next term. And we'll let you know.
okay, good, because I will not remember, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, as long as you tell me that you took it, I know that you emailed me, I know that Nate emailed me. There might have been someone else, and if so, I forget, I'm just kind of putting it in a folder. I don't think we have a city tracking system for that yet, I know I asked when it kind of first came up, but it's still kind of new.
Yes.
And we were having a lot of transitions up with our boards and commissions folks, so hopefully we can get that built into sort of the bigger tracking system, so that if you haven't, like, something can get kicked out, but if not, we're trying to do that here too. But we also have Brian in this training, so
Yeah, we do that.
we're trying to,
Do it yearly because the staggered on the board, and a good refresher every year, learn something new issue comes up, things along those lines.
yeah, I think
We
it's been a couple of years probably since we've had you, so,
strive.
yeah. We try to wait till we know there's gonna be a transition of new people and things like that too, so, yeah, I wanna say maybe it's been 2 years. I know the last time we did it was, we were still virtual.
Yeah.
So I do recall that, but, and then of course, if anyone has questions, you can always forward them to me, I'm happy to put you in touch with Brian as well, so don't hesitate to reach out.
With the caveat that I can't give.
You're not giving
personal
no.
opinions.
But if you have the broader question that you would like from the city attorney's office, kind of as, you know, I can always connect you with them too.
Awesome.
Thanks, Jan.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
That's Bill, he is our finance manager.
I recognize his face, I couldn't remember who he was.
Yes, we was here during budget season.
Yes, okay. Okay, what's happening, other updates?
Yeah, just have a couple things for everyone, and then of course, if anyone has any questions. So some of you may have seen, I know I let Jared know, as staff, we did do sort of a URA update to the agency last Monday evening. It wasn't specific to any particular area, but really what it was kind of kind of came from some direction from the agency back in March, about interest in some type of a strategic plan, tied to URAs, really more very high level, if we were to create a new URA, maybe. We're not 100% sure what maybe the agency was looking for, it's not a document that is common, and by common, I mean, as of last year, there were 92 urban renewals kind of within, or 92 communities that have urban renewal areas within the state, and there's only one that sort of has this larger strategic plan, really because each urban renewal area, as you guys know, has its own plan and its report, and so there's a different process. So part of going to them was kind of to try and get a sense as to maybe what it is that they would like to see. We had initially planned to do a work session. There's been a lot of things happening in the community, not that urban renewal isn't important, but there were topics that really they need to have the opportunity to discuss. So we moved it from a work session to more of an info session. So part of it was to kind of say, hey, you guys wanted this strategic plan. So to kind of start the ball rolling, let's kind of let you know the things that we've done, the things that we're doing, how we've invested funds to figure out what is it that you'd like to see. And so that was kind of the preface for the presentation. During that, we provided an update, I think I've shared with you all. You know, we are working on a new urban renewal area in the North Waterfront area. So we were able to provide sort of an update on that work. And then kind of an overview of just the different types of investments we do, whether it's infrastructure, jobs, the traded sector, site readiness, you know, the smaller businesses trying to help with, you know, kind of the different scales of the work that we do, and kind of opening that up. As part of that though, I did want to share, Councilor Brown, who his ward is sort of North Gateway, did have a really great question, and he was kind of asking, because one of the things we shared is, you know, North Gateway, we will stop collecting after this fiscal year, for tax increment. We still have a lot of money, we still have a long list of projects, we won't be closing out the URA, we'll keep working on the projects. It's very common, for a URA to stay open for 5 or 8 or 10 years while you're still working on these projects, but you're not collecting anymore. And so, you know, his question was, hey, we're gonna stop collecting, you have money, what's the plan? And so it did give me a really great opportunity to sort of share the process that this board went through, you know, as part of that maximum indebtedness process that we did back in 2019, to really say, here's where the focus of those funds are gonna be, and that's where we're continuing to focus our efforts as a board, you know, where that money is going. And so I was able to share sort of the work that's happening and the projects that are still on deck. And I received a very positive response for that. And so I just wanted to share with the board that, you know, I was able to kind of toot the horn of the work that you guys have been doing, and really receive positive feedback for, you know, the projects that are still, you know, in our master list, moving forward. So that was really great. So I just kind of want to give everyone a heads up. You may have read that we were there. I never know what gets out, so I just want to make sure that, you know from me that that was sort of the intent of what we did, and that's kind of, you know, how that one happened. So that was last Monday evening we did that. So if there's no questions on that one. 2640 Portland Road, we have not forgotten about our fun little friend. So I am hoping, I'm double crossing my fingers for those of you who are virtual, to get our environmental clearance very, very soon. Some of you might recall, our final no further action sort of document that we need from DEQ, was actually tied to the adjacent property. The adjacent property and our property at one point had the exact same ownership. And so honestly, it's above my knowledge base as to why it was set up this way. But we had to get sort of all the documents and the no further action for the adjacent site in order for us to get it for our site. So it's kind of in order for one to get it, the other one has to get it. And it seems as though our adjacent site was very close to having it done. And then at one point in time, the property was sold and things just kind of didn't happen and got lost. So we've been working diligently for probably the last 9 months with the adjacent site, with consultants, with DEQ, to try and get all those documents finalized so that we'll have final environmental clearance for the site, which would allow us to then really be able to move forward, because we don't want to try to move forward while we're still trying to deal with things with DEQ. I had an email this morning, so things are still hopefully moving quickly. And then once we get that, then we'll be scheduling some, probably reaching out to the counselor whose ward to kind of get some feedback. And then the next step would really be to take it to an executive session, because it would be a disposition of land. So real estate, we would go to an executive session to kind of get some feedback. We have the goals that the board has kind of put together, and that would be shared at that point in time. And then from there, I'll let y'all know what the plan is. So I'm not sure. I tentatively am hoping to have an update for this in December. It may just be the environmental piece of it. But if not, I think, we're very close. So, and some of you might remember too, part of the delay, although we still had to get through environmental either way, we have block 50 across the street, we have block 45. And so as staff, we've been trying to get, it took us a few months to get the developer locked down for 45. And so we had sort of, the agency was kind of focused on that and focused on some things with block 50. And so we didn't want to sort of add one more thing where we weren't able to sort of make progress. So we are trying to kind of also look at, what we're putting in front of the agency and trying to kind of, one after another versus piling a lot of things on them at once. So we're still moving. It's just, I think a lot of you have dealt with, the DEQ issues, and they don't go as fast as we all like, but we're really trying. So there's that. Are there any questions about that? And then just for board housekeeping, Jared and I had a chance to chat, and I think we're planning to do a December meeting. We'll figure out if we have stuff for that meeting, so y'all get November off. We don't have any grant exceptions coming through, although we are still getting, some good applications. So funds are still going out the door. Our grant program is doing, wonderfully throughout the city. But we are getting some North Gateway stuff, so there's activity happening in the area. And then, as Erin said, I anticipate probably after the first of the year, I'll be able to bring back Portland Road and kind of what it looks like we might be able to do, and with our budget, to have that conversation to make those decisions in terms of what the board would like to a la carte onto that project, what's feasible, what's not feasible. So hopefully we'll be able to do that after the first of the year. And then the other thing, I think probably after the first of the year too, I would like to bring back to the board, and hopefully you all would be open to providing feedback, is when we do, as we get closer to launching North Waterfront and getting ready to start that, I would really love to get this board's sort of feedback. It's really gonna be north of downtown, but it's gonna be kind of just west of North Gateway. I mean, we're kind of looking Broadway to the waterfront. It's gonna kind of go all the way from just north of downtown up to Kaiser. So it's gonna have a mix of kind of what you have downtown, but also kind of this synergy, hopefully, from what we're doing in North Gateway. And so I really like to just kind of get everyone's feedback, hopefully, in terms of what kind of projects we're looking at and things of that nature, if you're all open to it. We don't have an advisory board for that area, so we're hoping to pull your ears and DEB's ears and kind of get some feedback.
So a question on that, would it be
Yeah.
incorporating, someone looking at the picture of the south waterfront, is it incorporating some existing?
No, it's gonna be the opposite way. So South Waterfront is actually like dirt by council chambers and all that. So it's down here.
Yep.
We're gonna go up. So Market Street headed north. So that whole waterfront area where we have a lot of industrial properties that are changing uses. We have land that's, underdeveloped. There's some good opportunities in there for middle housing. But we know, because of all the industrial in there, and we've seen that, I think, in North Gateway, there's a lot of infrastructure needs in order to develop anything in there, and without some sort of resource, it just financially can't happen. And downtown's pretty much almost built out. I mean, minus the site that we commonly love to refer to as the pit, right up here across from the forge, that's all blocked in. It has a hole, which is why we call it the pit. that's really the only site that's left in downtown. I mean, everything is built up, and so the direction to move would be north. And so the idea is kind of, let's kind of look at, okay, we've got the downtown synergy and the types of things going in here, but then, you know, we do have some industrial properties and we have what's happening in North Gateway, and so it's gonna be kind of an interesting mix of different types of investments is what we're looking at. And it's been recommended to look at that area since, gosh, when I first started. We were, you know, getting recommendations to look at the waterfront and how do we open that up and how do we, you know, really connect that and not make it feel like there's sort of this barrier between downtown and just north. And so that's part of why, you know, the agency had asked us in spring of 2024 to start looking into it. And so that's what we've been doing.
One of the things that has happened several times in the past is city planning in their wisdom decided that they were going to develop, upgrade, etc., an area and came up with creative plan and zoning. And if you took a look at Liberty and Commercial, the rezoning of that property and Parkway connections basically zoned out the existing use of the existing residential and came up with this commercial mixed zoning, which was unrealistic. Okay. Consequently, in the decades that revised zoning has been in place, I'm not aware of any successful development that's ever occurred there. What they did was they forced out multiple uses. So the concern that I would have as far as the north of the riverfront downtown and south of North Gateway is to take a look at the existing uses and be very careful about arbitrarily rezoning it because there is so much major industrial in that area that the rezoning to go to something that was going to be mixed use could negatively impact hundreds of thousands of square foot of industrial space. And in today's marketplace, we don't have enough industrial property for what would be considered a normal development scheme. Just like there's the conversation about what is the inventory that's required for so many years for residential, and that doesn't occur for industrial. So that is going to be a real serious concern about what happens in that area.
I can tell you within our small but mighty urban renewal team, and we actually just had a meeting yesterday. The topic of industrial is huge for us because we hear it, we see it, you know, we have the benefit of working with so many folks that, and we don't have the space, or somebody wants to expand and they can't go, or, you know, they can't grow where they're at, and it's really tricky. The one nice thing I will say, and I did share this when I had the opportunity to speak with the agency board last week, was, you know, in some ways, one of the benefits to urban renewal, and it's not city, I mean, it's the state sort of requirement, is we can't change the zoning for a project. We're not allowed to. So part of the reason when we go through the larger process, and some of you might recall when we did substantial amendment, we had to go through the same process as we created a new urban renewal area. And we actually go to the planning commission, not because they have an authority to say yes or no to an urban renewal area, but it's really to confirm that the projects that we have meet the existing zoning. Now, And I run into this even when we're working on our single URA program, where I'll have a developer come to me and they're like, wanna do affordable housing and you've got this program and it's like, great, where's the site, tell me about it, and well, we're going through land use, cause it's not, I said, I can't do anything with you until you get through zoning, because if it's not zoned, we can't use urban renewal for it. So in some ways, it's kind of nice, because when we're looking at it, it's like, hey, what is the zoning? What makes sense? How can we do it? Versus, looking at creating projects that would require a zone change. That would really be up to the developer to go through that. So it does help, in some ways, I feel like it does kind of help protect a little bit what you're saying, but I think it's a really great point. And I know from a staff perspective, we kind of look at it almost like it is a kind of this interesting mix of what could be what you have downtown, but it's also very reminiscent of what we have in North Gateway. And so I think it'll be interesting as we kind of build it out, and then, like I said, just to get feedback from folks. It is a different area, but it's so close to two existing sort of corridors that are very different, but you all have had so much experience in. And so we wanna make sure we get it right.
Probably listening to what the neighbors.
Yeah, what are we hearing from the businesses, what have we been hearing from the property owners? And then what are we seeing happening in those corridors that are adjacent to? So we can build it out in the right way. I mean, I think we've come up with a good mix. But are we missing something? And as you all know, we try not to get too detailed, because then we just have to do plan amendments. So keeping those things broad, but just checking it, is there something that just doesn't pass the smell test for you guys and all your, years and years of experience and connections with other people and what you've heard? We wanna make sure that it makes sense and it helps build on the synergy of the other areas that we've been investing in and trying to, help developers and help existing businesses and do the infrastructure so that people wanna come in and, continuing along with a lot of that work. It takes a very long time to see the benefits of, but little by little, we see those benefits, so. That's kind of what's on the horizon, but from this conversation, I'm at least getting that y'all are interested in providing some feedback, so that's great.
Absolutely.
I appreciate that. That's all I have, unless anyone has anything.
Oh, cool. Zoom people, Scott, Kevin, I think we
One thing I
lost.
was gonna offer was a motion to adjourn.
At 9 o'clock.
Yeah, she had a 9-minute meeting, or 9 o'clock meeting.
I'm good with the journey when you guys are, but I am excited about the waterfront talk with respect to the concerns over the industrialization. But as someone who's fairly new to Salem, this is starting, I think, going on my 5th year. It took me forever to understand where the river was, besides when I was crossing the bridge or at that park downtown, because it's so cut off from by the housing up River Road and whatnot. And it's the Willamette River, which is somewhat iconic, and I feel like it squanders one of the great natural assets the city has for in terms of livability, and livability is what it attracts commerce and business. So I'm excited about it and can't wait to see it.
Awesome. Well, anything else? We'll see everybody in December. Meeting adjourned, thank you.
See you guys in December.
Sarah,